It is 6 in the morning, you are hunched over the toilet, white-knuckling the seat, face flushed, jaw clenched, and nothing is happening. Absolutely nothing. 20 minutes have passed. Your back aches, and what finally comes out after all that effort is a handful of hard, dry pellets that look like rabbit droppings. This is not a once-in-a-while inconvenience. This is your morning. Every morning, the infuriating part is that you have been trying. You mix those chalky, disgusting fiber powders into your water every night. You eat your leafy greens and your flax seeds. You drink your water. And still you wake up bloated, gassy, and completely stuck. So, if fiber is the answer, why are you getting worse? Here is what your gastroenterologist is not telling you, and here is what the fiber supplement industry is praying you never discover. The reason you are constipated has almost nothing to do with how much roughage you are eating. The real biological crisis inside your aging colon right now is something called bile sludge stasis, and it is destroying your digestive system while the supplement industry profits from selling you a chalky powder that is actively making things worse with every single spoonful. Stay with me through this entire video, because by the end, you will have an exact protocol to restore effortless elimination starting as soon as tomorrow morning. There are two questions I want you to hold on to right now. Why does adding more fiber actually worsen constipation severity in adults over 50? And what biological compound does your colon require before it can move anything at all? Both answers are coming. To understand why your colon is essentially paralyzed, you need to understand something that mainstream medicine almost never discusses: the role of bile in bowel motility. Most people think of bile as a fat-digesting fluid the gallbladder releases after meals. That is an incomplete and dangerously misleading picture. Bile is not just a fat-digesting agent. Bile is your colon's primary internal lubricant. It is the biological equivalent of a slip-and-slide coating that lines the entire length of your intestinal wall, allowing digested waste to move through smoothly, effortlessly, and at the correct pace from beginning to end. When your liver is producing thin, free-flowing bile in adequate quantities, your colon operates like a well-oiled machine. Waste enters, bile coats every surface of the intestinal lumen, peristaltic muscle contractions push everything forward in rhythmic waves, and elimination happens naturally, completely, and without strain. After the age of 50, that system breaks down in a way doctors are not trained to address and supplement companies are financially motivated to ignore. As your body ages, your liver's metabolic output slows significantly. The simultaneous decline of estrogen and testosterone, which accelerates sharply after 50, directly impairs the liver's ability to synthesize bile salts efficiently. Estrogen, in particular, plays a protective role in bile composition by preventing cholesterol supersaturation within the biliary system. When estrogen drops, that protection disappears entirely. Reduced physical activity further slows overall hepatic blood flow, meaning the liver receives less oxygen and fewer raw materials to fuel its bile production cycle. Your bile composition begins to shift. Instead of the thin, watery, free-flowing fluid it is supposed to be, your bile accumulates excess cholesterol, crystallized bile salts, and mucin proteins. It thickens. It becomes viscous and stagnant. Clinical gastroenterologists have a specific term for this intermediate state that exists before full gallstone formation: biliary sludge. But what nobody is telling you is that you do not need actual gallstones to suffer the full consequences of this thickening. Even at the biliary sludge stage, bile output drops dramatically in both volume and fluidity, and that is the exact moment when the slip-and-slide lining of your colon disappears entirely. Imagine your intestinal tract as a long water slide at full operation. When there is a constant, generous stream of water flowing down that slide, everything placed on it moves smoothly and without any friction at all. Now turn the water off completely. Everything placed on that slide drags, scrapes, and clings to the surface. The slide has become a trap. That is precisely what your colon becomes when bile sludge stasis takes hold. Without that slippery biliary coating, digested waste compacts directly against dry, unprotected intestinal walls. Peristaltic muscle contractions lose their mechanical advantage entirely because there is no lubricant to reduce friction between stool and tissue. Your colon, sensing that conditions are wrong, absorbs even more water from the stool out of desperation, making everything harder, drier, and more impacted. And there you are on that toilet every morning, straining and suffering, genuinely wondering what you are doing wrong. You are not doing anything wrong. You have been handed the wrong solution entirely, and the industry profiting from that wrong solution has zero incentive to correct the record. Now let us dismantle the fiber supplement myth completely, because this is where the functional medicine community parts ways with mainstream dietary advice in the most dramatic and consequential way possible. You have been told, by your doctor, by every nutrition influencer, by every wellness brand with a product to sell, that constipation is fundamentally a fiber deficiency problem. Take more psyllium husk, take more methylcellulose, bulk up the stool, push it through. In the over 50 population suffering from bile sludge stasis, this advice is not just ineffective, it is actively harmful, and the published clinical data proves it beyond any reasonable dispute. Psyllium husk, the most widely recommended bulking fiber supplement on the market, works by absorbing water in the intestinal tract and expanding into a dense gel-like mass that is supposed to stretch the intestinal wall and trigger colon contractions. In a young, adequately hydrated person with healthy bile output, this mechanism can produce a modest benefit. But the aging colon, as documented in research published in the journal Gut, absorbs water from intestinal contents at approximately 40% greater efficiency than younger colons. This means the water psyllium husk needs to swell and become mobile, is stripped away before the fiber can accomplish anything at all. What remains is a dense, compacted, severely dehydrated fiber mass sitting inside a dry, unlubricated intestinal tube with nowhere to go. Researchers at the University of Amsterdam published findings confirming that high-dose fiber supplementation in elderly patients with underlying biliary insufficiency actually increased colonic transit time compared to placebo, meaning it measurably worsened constipation severity rather than improving it. The undigested fiber sitting stagnant in the lower colon becomes a fermentation substrate for harmful bacterial populations, producing hydrogen sulfide and methane gases in volumes that generate the chronic bloating, abdominal distension, and cramping you experience every single day. You are pouring dry sand into a clogged pipe that has no lubrication and wondering why nothing drains. The fiber supplement industry holds this clinical evidence. The data is published and accessible, and they are still selling you a $30 tub of chalky powder every month. The solution to bile sludge stasis is not adding more bulk to a colon that has been stripped of its lubrication. The solution is restoring the bile flow that the colon requires to function. The most scientifically validated, clinically documented method to accomplish this in an aging body is through a specific two-compound synergy, TUDCA paired with high-yield artichoke leaf extract. TUDCA stands for tauroursodeoxycholic acid, and it is a water-soluble bile acid occurring naturally in small quantities within human bile. It is structurally distinct from the primary bile acids your liver produces, and this structural distinction is what makes it therapeutically powerful for this specific problem. Primary bile acids, particularly deoxycholic acid, become hydrophobic and biologically toxic at the elevated concentrations that develop during bile sludge stasis. They accumulate, they crystallize, and they damage hepatic cell membranes. TUDCA is hydrophilic, meaning it is water-loving at the molecular level, and when introduced into the biliary system at a therapeutic dose, it acts as a molecular solvent that physically displaces these toxic, crystallized bile acids from the bile pool, breaking apart the sludge matrix and restoring the aqueous, free-flowing quality that bile is supposed to possess. A landmark study published in the journal Hepatology demonstrated that oral TUDCA supplementation reduced biliary sludge composition by up to 67% over an 8-week period in patients with documented biliary insufficiency. But the mechanism goes deeper than dissolution alone. TUDCA also activates specific nuclear receptors inside hepatocytes, the liver's primary bile-producing cells, that upregulate the expression of key bile acid synthesis enzymes. In plain language, TUDCA does not just liquefy the bile that already exists. It signals the liver to produce more bile, thinner bile, and in greater volume. The gallbladder receives this newly liquefied flow and releases it into the duodenum more readily with each meal. The colon begins to receive its lubricant again. Wait, I need to fix bile producing. Let me adjust. TUDCA also activates specific nuclear receptors inside hepatocytes, the liver's primary working cells, that upregulate the expression of key bile acid synthesis enzymes. This is where artichoke leaf extract enters the protocol and amplifies everything that TUDCA has initiated. Artichoke leaf extract, standardized to a minimum of 15% cynurin and chlorogenic acid content, works through a completely separate but perfectly complementary biological mechanism. Cynurin is a bitter phenolic compound that directly stimulates the hepatic bile duct and the ampulla of Vater through a dual choleretic and cholagogue action. A choleretic agent increases bile production inside the liver itself. A cholagogue agent increases bile release from the gallbladder. Most herbal compounds accomplish one of these functions. Artichoke leaf extract accomplishes both simultaneously, creating a coordinated surge of bile flow from two independent points in the biliary tract at the same time. Clinical research from the University of Reading, published in Phytomedicine, documented that 300 milligrams of standardized artichoke leaf extract increased measured bile flow rate by up to 127% within 60 minutes of oral administration in human subjects. When you pair that dual action with TUDCA's bile thinning and bile synthesis upregulating properties, you are engineering a biological tidal wave of thin, slippery, free-flowing bile that reaches the colon within the critical window before digestion is complete. The slip and slide is fully restored. Peristaltic contractions regain the mechanical advantage they have been without for years. Waste begins to move again, smoothly, completely, and without any effort on your part. Here is the exact protocol. Every day for the next 7 days, 30 minutes before your primary evening meal, take 250 milligrams of pure TUDCA and 300 milligrams of artichoke leaf extract, standardized to a minimum of 15% cynurin content. This timing is critical and not negotiable. You need TUDCA in your hepatic circulation before food arrives in the duodenum so that the newly liquefied bile is available the moment your gallbladder receives the cholecystokinin signal to contract. Take both compounds on an empty stomach with 12 ounces of room temperature water. Taking TUDCA alongside food blunts, hepatic absorption by creating competition with dietary fat for the same intestinal transporter pathways. When purchasing these two compounds, do not accept proprietary blends where individual ingredient doses are concealed inside a combined milligram figure. You need clearly labeled, single ingredient products at verified therapeutic thresholds. Generic artichoke capsules bearing no standardization statement are not biologically equivalent and will not produce the same choleretic outcome. The cynurin concentration is the entire therapeutic point. Then, right before bed, take 400 milligrams of elemental magnesium citrate with 8 ounces of warm water. Pay careful attention to the word elemental. Magnesium supplement labels typically list total compound weight, not elemental magnesium weight. Read the supplement facts panel and locate the elemental magnesium figure specifically. Reaching 400 milligrams of actual elemental magnesium from magnesium citrate typically requires approximately 2,000 milligrams of the compound as printed on the label. Magnesium citrate is an osmotic agent. It draws water into the intestinal lumen from surrounding tissues through osmotic pressure gradients. Consumed with warm water immediately before sleep. It works quietly throughout your entire sleep cycle, gently and steadily pulling fluid into the colon, expanding the intestinal tissue, hydrating the walls, and softening any compacted material that has accumulated. The morning bile surge triggered by your before-dinner TUDCA and artichoke dose then arrives to a colon that is already hydrated, already expanded, and already primed for effortless motility. The two mechanisms synchronize perfectly across your sleep cycle. When you wake up, your body is biologically prepared to complete elimination without strain, without waiting, and without pain. Rise slowly. Do not immediately consume coffee or food. Give yourself 20 full minutes in the upright position after waking, then drink 16 ounces of warm water to stimulate the gastrocolic reflex. which is the neurological signal that waking and consuming a warm liquid triggers colon contraction. Then simply wait. You will not need to push. The biology will handle it. Starting tonight, discard the fiber powder. Do not finish the container. The fiber is mechanically working against the very biology you are about to restore, and continuing to use it will undermine every result you are trying to achieve. Tonight, take your 250 milligrams TUDCA and 300 milligrams standardized artichoke leaf extract exactly 30 minutes before dinner. Before bed, take your magnesium citrate with warm water. Tomorrow morning, drink your warm water, give your body 20 minutes, and pay close attention to what happens. This is the 7-day Motility Reset Challenge. Each morning for the next 7 days, track 2 things. First, the quality and completeness of your elimination. Was there straining? Was it effortless? Was it complete in a single movement without lingering discomfort? Second, your abdominal flatness and comfort by midday. Bloating is the direct byproduct of bacterial fermentation of slow-moving, stagnant waste. As bile flow normalizes and transit time shortens, that fermentation slows and the bloating dissolves. By day 3, the overwhelming majority of people implementing this protocol report their first genuinely effortless morning elimination in years. By day 7, the pattern has become consistent, and the straining, the cramping, and the chronic afternoon distension that has defined your mornings for years will have become something you no longer recognize your life by. Share this video right now with someone in your life who is suffering with this silently, because constipation is destroying the quality of life of millions of adults over 50 who have spent years following advice that was anatomically and biochemically wrong for their aging body. Subscribe and hit the notification bell before you close this tab, because the next video in this series is going to expose something that will genuinely disturb you. We are going to identify a specific protein produced inside your own intestinal lining called zonulin that is silently dismantling your gut barrier right now, allowing partially digested food fragments and bacterial endotoxins to pass directly into your bloodstream and drive the systemic inflammation showing up in your body as joint pain, cognitive fog, chronic skin conditions, and metabolic dysfunction that your doctor is currently treating as 5 completely separate problems with 5 different prescriptions. The solution is a single fermented food consumed in one specific East Asian culture for over 2,000 years, and it produces a clinically measurable reduction in circulating zonulin and systemic inflammatory markers within 21 days. You need to see this. Do not miss